So I have been actually working into microservice based architecture, where almost all the services, most of them are actually there into Spring Boot itself. And for the inter-service communication part, we are using Kafka. Apart from that, we also have certain REST endpoints exposed in few of our services for the UI to actually fetch the data, or configure some kind of data, or interact with backend services. And for storing the data, we are using MongoDB over here. Apart from that, we are using Git as a versioning tool. We are also using this Docker for Docker containers for testing and deploying our applications. And yeah, for the build purpose and everything, we are using Jenkins and working into it agile
Okay, good.
methodology. So we are using Jira as well as the tool for creating user stories and different kind of bugs. So my roles and responsibilities are basically grooming the discussions, and apart from that, majorly involved into implementation of changes along with unit testing and bug fixing. For unit testing, we are using JUnit, and mocking purpose, we are using Mockito framework.
Okay. So, Mansi, can you just tell me uh, if I want to create a Spring project, uh, how do you go about it? Like, what are the configurations and Spring Boot project?
Yeah. So basically, in order to create a Spring Boot project, what you can do is you can either use spring.initializer.io. There you can actually provide the initial set of dependencies, whatever you want. Suppose DB, you want MongoDB, so you can have it, and it can actually create a Spring Boot project for it. You can download from there. You can provide the group ID, artifact ID, and everything. Likewise, it will actually create a Spring Boot project for you, and you can download and start importing it into your IntelliJ or STS, whatever you are using. That will actually create a basic application for you.
Okay. How do you change the default configurations that are already there? Like, if I don't want to use the embedded ports or for which the server is deployed, if I want to change the database configuration or if I want to change the server configuration, the port configuration, uh, how do you change those settings, the default settings that are provided by Spring?
Yes, so in case suppose you want, by default it runs on 8080 port, and you want to run it on some other port, you can actually provide server dot port into your application dot properties. So as soon as your application start, it will start on that particular port. Apart from this, you mentioned like changing the default server. Usually we have Tomcat server onto which it gets deployed and starts running on that particular port. So if you want to use some other server, what you can do is you can include Tomcat as an exclusion into your pom.xml, and you can include whatever particular web server you want onto which your application to be deployed. There you can actually provide that as a dependency in pom.xml, and then as soon as your application starts, it will deploy on that particular server that you have provided as the additional dependency.
Have you connected your Spring application to database? Like it must have, but which database have you used?
Yeah, so here we are using NoSQL DB, like we are using MongoDB over here.
Okay. So how have you connected to MongoDB?
Yeah, so basically into our application or properties, we actually provide the host and port onto which the MongoDB has to connect to. Apart from that, you can also provide the database name if you want, and
No.
specify.
That is not my question. That is not my question. That I understood. In server, in your property file, you can configure the port and the DB name and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But if you want to query that database from your Spring Tau classes, how do you do that? What are
Yeah.
you using?
Yeah, so we are actually creating an interface, the repository interface, and annotating it with @repository annotation, and we extend the Mongo repository. Similarly, we have like CRUD repository, JPA repository. We have specific to MongoDB, we have Mongo repository over there. So as soon as you extend it, so into the repository, you get like default methods. For example, save all, delete by id, delete, and apart from that you can find all, find by id. So all these default methods actually come along with that.
Okay. Have you worked on uh, in Mongo? Have you worked on saving bulk records instead of a single record?
Yeah. So you can actually use save all for that basically, and you can provide the list of all your entity that you actually want to save.
So you uh, so you have also written in your CV that you have worked on Cassandra DB, is it?
Yeah. Initially I've
So
actually worked.
how what is the difference? Like, what are the pros and cons of both Mongo and Cassandra? Like, do you because how do you prefer like the two functions to be able to what are
Yeah,
the key
so okay.
features?
Yeah, so actually if you talk about Mongo and Cassandra DB, so into Cassandra DB we have one advantage, like you can say into MongoDB, if you have suppose a high availability kind of a setup, and you have one as master and other working as slaves. So when master will go down, anyone will actually become the anyone's slave
I
will be
was
elected as the master. And likewise that actually the entire replication concept is there in MongoDB, whereas in Cassandra DB, in the cluster itself, you have almost all there is no concept of master slave. All of them are actually working as master itself. So you can actually, and the data replication is quite fast. So if you talk about speed and scalability, so in that case, because of this reason, Cassandra is better than MongoDB. Both are NoSQL, but performance wise, Cassandra is better.
so with respect to Spring, have you used any scheduling processes in Spring? Like batch, you know about batches and you know about schedulers, right? Which run
Yeah.
probably nightly builds or you or some cron jobs. Have you come across something like that?
Yes. I have used schedulers basically into Spring.
What does it do and how do you configure them?
Yeah, so we can do it using scheduled annotation. So into that, basically you can provide the fixed delay or something, like whatever delay, with which delay you want to actually run that. अपने आप ही वो हो जाता है. हाँ. Yeah, hi Nikita. I'm not sure why it is actually disconnecting me again and again.
No problem, but I think now I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we were talking about schedule processes, how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So basically here we use scheduled annotation, and you can annotate it over a method. You can define the fixed delay inside that, with which delay, suppose I want to run it within every 1 hour. So I can give the delay over there, and apart from that I can define whatever my functionality is. Like usually we delete the stale entries into the database, which actually elapse a particular time period, onto which that particular thing has to be processed. If that is elapsed, we usually delete it from the database. For cleanup processes, we basically use it. And you can also use @enable scheduling annotation to enable your scheduling basically.
Okay, good. I got it. Have you used any Excel related APIs
I have
for
used
Excel reading for reporting?
Yeah, I have used Apache Poi for that.
So have you also come across asset oriented programming? AOP?
Not very much onto it, but yes, I have like used basic point cuts I have created for, suppose I have a logging purpose or some other different purposes. So we usually create point cuts, and in the around advice, basically we actually execute some particular logic, and then we execute other things. Onto our controllers, we are actually using certain kind of point cuts.
You said you used Excel API, Apache Koi,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, like, have you also used it for reading, writing, or just exporting? Like, for what features have you used in this Apache Koi?
Yeah, actually we have like you can say a very huge Excel file that actually gets imported into our application. So that is bulk device import. So using that Excel, there are multiple devices into it. Very huge number of thousands of devices are there. So for parsing those devices, parsing logic of those devices, we have used Apache Koi.
So, I have a question. I have a scenario. Uh, in a MongoDB, I have 5 columns. I should not say
Okay.
columns because there is no column and rows concept there. But let's say there is a huge collection in MongoDB, okay?
Okay.
And let's say I am storing the data of an organization.
Okay.
And in the organization, I have some basic things like organization name, organization ID,
Okay.
organization location, like where the organization is situated. And inside that, I have a huge uh, array of all the employee data. Just example I'm giving.
Okay.
It can be an array, right? There can be an array inside the document, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the collection is very huge. Okay. Now there is a dashboard in which I just want to display details of organization like ID name and where is the organization currently situated. I don't want to get the details of the employees which is stored inside this collection.
Yeah. Okay.
But when I am displaying the data on the dashboard, it's taking a lot of time because I have used find by ID and it is getting me the whole data set of the collection of one full document. Okay. So how do I improve the performance?
So your problem is that it is taking a lot of time for fetching the data from the database, right? Okay.
Yes, because the collection size is too huge. No, I cannot say collection. I should say document size is too huge.
Okay. So document size is too huge.
And there are a
Hmm.
lot of fields in this document, but I may not be requiring all of the fields. But I have used find by query, so I think it will return all the fields, right?
Okay. Yeah. If you have actually done find by ID, it will actually return you all the fields for it. So, okay, and you want certain data. So, I mean, can we like, for example, you can say use custom query for that? Like, I can provide @query annotation to just find the query to just get me the name, location, etc. for this particular ID. Basically what you can do is you have some kind of default methods like find by ID or things like that, which are already defined in the repository. But if you want to provide your custom queries, you can use @query annotation, and inside double quotes you can actually provide the entire query which you want to hit. So I can do simply like select name, this name, ID, location from whatever is your collection name, organization, where ID is equal to this. So that will just return me that particular data only.
So customization, custom queries
Yeah.
using query.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is what I was looking for. Correct. Okay, so you've come across all the scenarios in your Mongo
Yeah.
implementation.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going through your CV just this one.
Sure.
You'll also use REST APIs and
Yeah.
microservices. Okay, what exactly is microservice? How is it different from web services?
Yeah, so web service is basically an independent application that you can use for some kind of performing some kind of business implementation or logic. Suppose I have an application that returns me some employee related data, it maintains it and it returns me, it stores, creates employee. So that is a web service which can be accessible over web, and that is independent in itself. If you talk about microservice is actually a combination of small services which are independent in itself, but they can communicate with one another to form a particular application. The major advantage with microservice that comes into picture is scalability. So suppose for instance, I'm not sure what Flipkart is using. Like suppose there is this application of Flipkart, and we have like multiple microservices, different services into it. Like for example, one is for product catalog, one is for order related data, one is for you can say some kind of user related data which deals with all the accounts of the users and their related details. So if I log in, so basically I will be able to see the product catalog. I can see my own personal information which will be coming from some user related service. I can see whatever orders I have placed, so that will be something that user service will actually get from order service. Okay, these are the previous past 10 orders that this person has placed. So something like this. So this kind of an architecture where multiple independent applications are actually talking to each other to solve a particular business purpose. This is basically a microservice. So suppose I have, like for example, daily I have for instance 1 million users that actually hit this particular Flipkart application, and they browse through it and place orders. Now there is some big billion sale coming in. So the for instance those 1 million users actually crawl up to 4 million users. Now what happens is definitely there will be a lot of load that will be put. So they have anticipated, okay, in our big billion sale there will be around 4 million users. So at runtime, so you can actually configure that at runtime you can actually increase the number of instances of a particular application. Suppose my user application is going to get a lot of hits, so at runtime I can actually scale that particular application so that it maintains the load in a proper way, and it doesn't stop responding or there is some issue because of heavy load. So this is what microservice is all about.
I suppose you are also written about HLD, LLD document preparation. So you have also what exactly do you put in HLD? High level document.
So, high level documents, I haven't actually written those documents, but high level documents are basically, a kind of high level description of all your services. Like, for example, I have, one of my service. Uh, Suppose, for example, I have a user service. So in HLD, basically, we will define whatever functionality that service will do, and what will be the basic things that it will do. And apart from that, these many endpoints it is going to expose to the user. And low level is basically how you are actually going to implement that particular thing into more detail and technical terms.
Have you created UMLs, charts, diagrams?
No.
How about your exposure to Java? Like which version of Java have you used?
Yeah, so actually I'm using Java version 8 over here in this particular project.
So have you used Lambda functions?
Yes.
Can you tell me what are those?
Yeah, so basically Lambda functions are actually used to provide the implementation of you can say abstract methods into a functional interface. Here these are anonymous functions into which you can actually using, like for example, it starts with a curly brace, and then you can provide, okay, this particular, suppose for each employee you are writing. so E, and then you can provide like dash and arrow symbol, and inside the curly braces you can actually provide the method function body basically. So likewise this we actually write a particular lambda function.
What are streams? What are streams?
Streams are basically so you can actually process the collections. Yeah, so streams are actually introduced as part of Java 8, into which you can actually process a particular collection into Java 8. So you can use the stream method for that, which actually converts it into stream, and further you can provide like intermediate operations. There are two types of operations: intermediate and ternary operations, or I think the terminal operations it is. So with intermediate operations, like you have filter, you have map, like for processing the stream data, we use intermediate operations. And for like returning, for example, you want to use a list, you want to return set, you want to find the average, you want to find the sum. For that we use actually terminal operations, which so collect method, minimum, maximum, average, these are actually terminal operations into a stream.
Okay, so one quick thing. You said collections. Okay, so uh, how does map as a collection work in the background?
Yeah, so map is actually it
How does
maintains.
map work? You must have heard about match map, right?
Yes, yeah. So basically, map stores the data into key value pairs. Keys are unique, values can be duplicate. So as soon as you do a put on map, so what happens is initially when you create a map, it has a bucket size of 16. So as soon as you do a dot put, it actually gets the hash code from the object class, or if you have overridden the hash code, it will get the hash code. And apart from that, it will do a mod by capacity, like initial capacity is 16. So it does a hash code mod 16. So anything that will be the resultant will actually land up between 0 to 15. So suppose it lands upon 2, the hash code mod 16 is actually 2. So on the second bucket, it will actually create, it will first check equals. If there is already a key with that, it will replace that. If it is not there, it will actually create a new node for a linked list and add a particular node on the second bucket position.
Yeah. Have you come across exception which says concurrent multiplication exception while working
Yes.
with maths? What
Yeah.
is it? Why did you get that exception?
Yeah, so basically we get that in fail fast collections. So basically, like for example, I have a list and I am trying to iterate through that list, and while iterating I try to modify that list as well. So in that case, that will throw concurrent modification exception. So we can use like fail safe collections in that case, or maybe modify it before or after, but do not modify it while iterating over them.
Fine, consequences. So once you have first exposure to UI as well, or you're just been working on the backend?
No, actually, I've been working into backend only.
Like basic HTML, CSS kind of stuff that you work?
Yeah, basic
And
H.
any front-end technology?
Yeah, basic HTML, CSS I'm aware of, but never got a technical exposure to Angular or React JS, things like that.
So, have you come across an error called cause error?
Which error?
Cause. Cause.
Yeah, okay. You are talking about this cross origin, right?
Yeah, what does it mean? When do you get these kind of errors?
Yeah, so basically, suppose you have a UI and you have your backend services. So when your UI tries to communicate to the backend service, there are certain course filters which you need to enable, where you provide, okay, my request will be coming from this particular place, from this particular UI, and it should be authorized. So if you do not provide that, you will not be able to actually hit your backend. So at the backend you need to provide, I think there is an annotation at the rate allow origin. So into that you have to actually provide the origin from which the request is coming, that you will consider as validated. Otherwise, if you do not provide that, you get the course error basically.
Okay. Just 2 minutes. Sorry.
Sure.
So you worked on Cisco products, I think,
Yes.
current organization. So you've got 5 years experience, and I think this is a good organization that you're working for. And you have typically worked for all the system products in current. You have also got exposure to Git, Jenkins, Jira. Have you have you used Git commands, or are you just doing it using IntelliJ right click option, or have you
No, no.
actually know how to do it in using Git bash?
No, no, I am using Git Bash as well.
What is Swagger?
Swagger is basically used for providing API documentation, and apart from that, you can also hit, like usually use Postman to hit your backend APIs. However, if you configure Swagger into your particular application, so what you can do is it will provide you the documentation. Okay, these are my list of APIs, and it actually you can like hit it for a particular service. Suppose your hostname colon your port, suppose it is running on 8080, you do a slash swagger ui.html. So in HTML you will be able to see where it will show you, okay, these many endpoints are there, these are get, these are put, these are post endpoints. And when you click on it, you will be actually able to see that in the request payload you have to, this kind of a schema will be there that you have to provide as part of the request, and you can hit the request from there as well. It will also list you down that for this particular endpoint you can have these many kind of responses. Suppose it is a create post endpoint, so you will have
Got it.
201 created, the 400 things like that, it will also show you, and you can definitely hit the endpoint and get the response as well from there.
Okay. Have you heard about something called as JSON response? JSON.
JSON response.
JSON or JSON. You know about XML, right?
Yes, yes,
Similarly,
yes.
we have JSON.
Yeah, yeah, we do
What is
have.
it? We use that.
Yeah, so JSON is basically like into a Springboot application. If you are using REST controller, so your auto configuration basically maps, like suppose I return a bean. So what auto configuration does is auto configuration automatically using Jackson object mappers. It automatically configures that into JSON and returns you. So at the time of returning, those object mappers are actually used, and internally using the auto configuration, Spring does that when you are returning a Pojo, it will get converted into JSON, and you will be able to see at the client end that this particular JSON you have got. So JSON is basically a schema that you can get from any particular endpoint in JSON body. You can have arrays, JSON objects, things like that.
Can you tell me what do you do for code quality? Like you need to maintain the code quality, right? So what are the different tools, or how is the code quality maintained in your current project?
Yeah, so we are actually using Sonar Cube for that. It does the static analysis over the code, and apart from that it actually also calculates the code coverage we have. So we are actually writing JUnits, and we are maintaining almost 95% of code coverage in all our services. So as soon as like you create a pull request, it runs Jenkins jobs onto which your it is executing the JUnits, and it is also doing the Sonar Cube does the static analysis, like there are critical, major, minor issues whatever are there for the static analysis part. And it also measures like complexity, that a particular method can have these many number of if else checks. So likewise that it actually does the static analysis and also calculates your code coverage. So if your code coverage is beyond 95%, it will automatically your build will pass, then only you will be able to merge your code. Otherwise you will not be able to merge your code, build will actually fail.
Okay, got it.